I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the numbers breathing wrong on the screen, like they were expanding and contracting beneath the cursor, taunting me. It was late, the kind of late where the office floor felt hollow and the hum of the ventilation system blended with the faint citrus scent of the cleaning spray lingering in the halls. I'd been reviewing disbursement summaries for one of our Phase II trials. Nothing unusual, just routine oversight. But a vendor name I didn't recognize blinked at me from the spreadsheet, as if it had been daring me to notice it for months. I scrolled back up and stared at it again. Veritas Clinical Partners. A generic name, almost too generic, like someone had fed a prompt into a machine and accepted the first sterile suggestion. $500,000 routed to them over 3 quarters, all marked as site operations for our neuromodulation therapy trial, all approved by Jonathan. My hands hovered over the touchpad, my fingertips tingling the way they do when adrenaline hits too fast. Veritas Clinical Partners. Why hadn't I seen it before? I clicked open the linked invoice, blurry, generic, missing the level of detail anyone legitimate would include. I enlarged the signature block. Jonathan's looping J, that careless slash of the N, impossible to miss once you've seen him sign anything even once. My chest tightened, not with fear at first, but with disbelief. The coffee sitting beside me had gone cold, but when I reached for it my hand trembled just enough to make the surface ripple. I opened another invoice. Same vendor, same signature, same vague descriptions. Another $320,000, then another. Trail after trail of money siphoned from our clinical budget, the single line item that could kill a biotech startup faster than anything else. You don't play with FDA trial money. You don't improvise with it. You don't touch it unless you're prepared to explain yourself to regulators who have the patience of glaciers and the power to wipe out everything you've built. But Jonathan had touched it. Jonathan had signed that he touched it. Jonathan, my CFO, the man who told me 2 months ago that I should let him handle the numbers so I could stay visionary, had dipped his hand into the bloodstream of my company like it belonged to him. The more I scrolled, the more the screen seemed to narrow around me. The paper in my printer tray rustled when the AC kicked on, and it startled me enough that I jerked my chin up, half expecting him to be standing in the doorway. Of course he was. People like Jonathan never appear at the moment you catch them. They appear later, with perfect timing, perfect calm, perfect rehearsed innocence. I clicked open the entity search tool we used for due diligence, typed in Veritas Clinical Partners. Nothing. A second attempt with a different spelling. Nothing again. By the third try my throat had gone dry, that metallic tang creeping up the back of my tongue. Then I found it. A small LLC 2 states away with a slightly different spelling, Veritas Clinical Consulting. Registered 18 months ago. No website. No employees listed. And the registered agent. A name I knew far too well. Jonathan's brother. My vision whitened at the edges. Cold spread through my body so fast I had to grip the desk to steady myself. Suddenly, every casual smile, every gentle correction, every patronizing compliment Jonathan had ever tossed my way rearranged themselves into something sharper, uglier. This wasn't mismanagement. This wasn't sloppiness. This was theft. Calculated, long-term, confident theft, because he believed I would never look closely enough to see it. And in that moment, with the office silent and the glow of the screen turning my hands faintly blue, I understood something with perfect clarity. Jonathan had betrayed me. I met Jonathan 5 years before any of this, before the invoices, before the shell company, before the board started treating him like the adult in the room and me like the visionary who needed guardrails. Back when it was just me and a dream I'd been carrying since grad school, sketching out neural pathway diagrams on napkins in a cramped cafe that smelled like burnt espresso and old books. I remember the first time he walked in. Tailored charcoal suit that didn't match the casual vibe of the place. Tortoiseshell glasses he kept polishing even though they were spotless. And that polished calm some men wear like armor. He slid into the seat across from me after our mutual investor introduced us. "You must be Dr. Hayes," he said, smoothing his tie. "I've read everything you've published on targeted neuromodulation. Brilliant, really." I remember smiling shy. a little uncertain. Compliments about my work always hit harder than compliments about me. I'm surprised you found it interesting. Most finance people glaze over at the first diagram. Jonathan laughed, soft and self-deprecating. I'm not most finance people. He wasn't wrong, at least not then. He'd done stints at 3 major funds, worked on 2 biotech exits, and had the kind of credibility I desperately needed to get people to take me seriously. We ordered coffees, mine plain, his some complicated mix of almond milk and extra foam, and talked for an hour. He asked smart questions about trial design, regulatory timelines, cash burn models. When I told him I wanted to build a company that treated patients like partners instead of data points, he leaned in like he actually cared. You're exactly the kind of founder investors look for, he said. You just need someone who can build the financial engine around your science. Let me help you. We can do something extraordinary together. It sounded sincere. It felt sincere. And at the time, I was tired of being dismissed by people who couldn't see past my age, my gender, my skin, or my insistence that ethics were not optional. Jonathan felt like a door opening. Stability, competence, someone who could navigate the spaces where I always felt like I needed permission to exist. But there were signs, tiny ones I brushed off because I wanted to believe in the person sitting across from me. The day we signed our founding documents, for example, I still remember the leather smell of the conference room chairs, the faint tapping of rain against the windows. I was reading through a clause about board voting thresholds when Jonathan reached over and gently pushed the papers toward me. It's standard, he murmured. You don't need to scrutinize every detail, trust me. Trust me, 2 words that should have crept under my skin, but instead made me feel safe, like I didn't have to carry everything alone. I nodded and signed. That was my first mistake. Type, continue for next part. You said. Continue. Corporate revenge, Black Lady said. Here is part 3, 400-600 words, following all structural rules. The first year felt like liftoff, messy, exhilarating, terrifying. We secured a $3.2 million seed round faster than I'd expected, anchored by 2 funds who were far more impressed with Jonathan's track record than my science. I told myself I didn't mind. Money was money, and we needed every dollar to hit our preclinical milestones. The office we leased had peeling carpet and a lingering odor of something between old soup and printer ink, but it was ours. The HVAC rattled like someone trapped a wrench in the vents. The lights flickered if you breathed too hard, and still I loved every inch of it. We hired a small team, 3 researchers, 1 operations lead, and a clinical coordinator whose desk was always buried in paperwork she swore she didn't create. The energy was electric. Every time we hit a milestone, Jonathan popped a bottle of some dry, expensive, sparkling wine and toasted to building something that will change lives. He said it like he meant it. I believed him. But the cracks started early, in ways that were easy to rationalize. The first red flag came 6 months in when I noticed a cost overrun on one of our lab supply accounts. The number didn't match our usage. I brought it to Jonathan, turning my monitor toward him. This is off, I said. We didn't order this much reagent. He didn't step closer, just leaned against my doorframe, arms crossed. Probably a supplier mix-up. Happens all the time. A 30% discrepancy doesn't just happen. Alexis, he said gently, you're overthinking it. Let me deal with the financial noise. You stay focused on what you do best. The way he smiled, patient, reassuring, made me swallow my instincts. I clicked the tab closed, but something about it lingered. Another moment came during a budget meeting. I'd suggested increasing patient outreach funding for our trial, concerned that enrollment was lagging. Jonathan tapped his pen, barely glancing at my presentation. We'll shift funds later. Right now, optics matter more. Investors want velocity. We can't have velocity without participants, I said. He sighed, the kind of sigh that implied I was being difficult. You're getting emotional. This is numbers, not neurology. That word, emotional, hit me harder than I expected. It turned the air around us brittle. Our operations lead, who'd been typing notes, froze mid-keystroke. Jonathan didn't even look up. I let it go, telling myself he was stressed. But by the time we secured our $780,000 contract with a regional hospital network for early patient screening analytics, Jonathan's lifestyle started shifting in ways I couldn't quite ignore. A new watch, sleek and painfully expensive. A car upgrade he never mentioned during our compensation meetings. Phone calls he'd step out for, lowering his voice until it was just a murmur behind the frosted glass. Vendor negotiations, he'd say whenever he caught me looking. I wanted to believe him, needed to even. We were growing and growth comes with stress fractures. That was normal. But late at night, when the office was quiet and the cleaning crew dragged their trash bins down the hallway, I'd sometimes open the financial dashboard and feel something cold settle in my chest. Something wasn't right. And I told myself, over and over, that I was imagining it. It started with a single spreadsheet column, one I'd seen 100 times, one I thought I knew as well as my own pulse. Clinical trial disbursements. Routine. Boring, even. But that afternoon, the numbers felt swollen, distorted, like they carried a secret too heavy to stay flat on the page. I was alone in the office. The air smelled faintly of stale coffee and the lemony disinfectant the cleaners always overused. A soft hum came from the old refrigerator down the hall, rattling just enough to irritate me. I blinked at the screen, adjusting my glasses, convinced fatigue was making the numbers blur. Then I saw it, Veritas Clinical Consulting, almost identical to Verita's clinical partners, the vendor name I'd flagged before, except now with a subtle spelling twist. And this one, it had received 3 separate disbursements in the last quarter alone, all approved, all signed by Jonathan. My stomach dropped. I clicked open the attached invoice. The description was vague, trial site coordination, with no address, no itemization, just a signature block that made my throat tighten. Same looping J, same lazy flourish on the tail end of his signature. Same confidence. My fingertips went cold against the trackpad. Another invoice. Another disguised variation of the same fake vendor name. It was like peeling wallpaper and finding mold packed against the wall, layer after layer of rot hidden under thin, decorative lies. I opened our disbursement system logs. My vision blurred for a moment before settling into sharp focus. There it was, multiple financial entries edited late at night, well after the hours Jonathan normally worked. Access originating from his administrator credentials. Timestamp metadata showing manual overrides of automated approval flags. I swallowed hard. My tongue felt thick, metallic. I clicked the export button and watched the logs appear line by line, the truth cascading down the screen until I felt physically ill. This wasn't just siphoning. This was architecture-level manipulation. He'd been altering our audit trails. But the deeper I dug, the more my world narrowed around a single realization. He didn't think I would look. He didn't think I would question anything he touched because he'd convinced the board, and slowly, subtly, me, that numbers were his domain, not mine. The next file I opened stole the air from my lungs. An email thread between Jonathan and someone named R. Lawson. The subject line, trial budget optimization, confidential. In the body, a single sentence that made my vision pulse white around the edges. She's too busy managing optics to notice the reallocations. Just keep the invoices clean. I reread it 3 times, my hand clenching the mouse so tightly my knuckles ached. My chest felt like it was caving inward, pressing against my ribs until every breath came sharp and thin. And then I clicked the attachment. Entity registration documents. Veritas Clinical Consulting. Registered under Jonathan's brother's name. Filed exactly 1 week before our first trial disbursement went out. My jaw went numb. Piece after piece slid into place. Every late-night edit, every vague excuse, every deflection masked as reassurance. It formed a picture so grotesque I almost couldn't look at it. $500,000, then another, then more. A total nearing $2.4 million siphoned from the lifeline of our company, rooted through a shell entity tied to his own bloodline. I sat back in my chair, heart hammering so violently I could feel it in my fingertips. And there, nestled in the final line of an internal memo he'd written to the board the previous month, I saw the smoking gun. We need stronger oversight on scientific decisions. Alexis tends to react emotionally under pressure. Emotionally, the word echoed in my skull. I saved every file, every log, every email, dragging them into a secure folder until my vision steadied enough to breathe. And as the last document finished copying, a single thought rose through the chaos like a blade. This was bigger than betrayal. This was war. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I drifted in and out of shallow, jagged dreams, each one dissolving the moment I opened my eyes to the glow of my laptop still sitting on the kitchen table. By morning, the apartment smelled like stale anxiety and the untouched cup of chamomile tea I'd made in a futile attempt to calm myself. My clothes from yesterday were crumpled on the chair. I threw on a blazer without looking at it and drove to the office on autopilot, my heartbeat thudding against the steering wheel. The building felt colder than usual. The elevator lights flickered slightly as I rode up, my reflection in the brushed metal doors looking like someone who'd aged a handful of years overnight. When I stepped into my office, I closed the door quietly, like a sound too loud might shatter whatever thin resolve I had left. I called outside counsel first, Melissa, someone I trusted more than most. She picked up with the clipped professionalism she was known for. "You're early," she said. "Everything okay?" "I found something," I whispered, my voice frayed. "Financial discrepancies, large ones." "How large?" Papers rustled on her end. 2.4 million, routed through shell vendors connected to Jonathan's brother. Silence, then. Jesus, Alexis. "I have emails, logs, invoice inconsistencies, metadata trails." "Okay," her tone sharpened. "Evidence or suspicion?" "I have proof." "Proof means nothing without preservation," she said. "Listen carefully. Do not confront him. Do not mention this to anyone. Not the board, not your operations lead. You move too early, he'll wipe everything clean. You need a forensic copy of the system before he even senses you're looking." My throat tightened. I can't do that on my own. "Then find someone who can, but tread lightly. And Alexis, be prepared. If this goes public before you're ready, it could destroy the company." The call ended, but the panic didn't. I emailed a board member next, Aaron, someone I thought would at least hear me out. I asked for an urgent call. 10 minutes later, he dialed in, his voice warm in that way people use when they don't intend to take you seriously. "You sound stressed," he said. "What's going on?" "I've uncovered serious financial misconduct." My voice wavered, but only slightly. "Jonathan has been embezzling trial funds." A pause. "Those are strong accusations." "I have evidence." "Alexis," his sigh stretched out, patronizing and heavy. "Jonathan is a seasoned CFO. These things are complex. Are you sure you're not misinterpreting the financial routing? Clinical trials are messy. Allocations shift." "I'm not misinterpreting anything," I snapped, heat rising in my cheeks. "There's a shell company, he approved it. His brother owns it." He exhaled sharply. "Let's not jump to conclusions. I think you need to focus on the science. Leave the financial oversight to the experts." The word experts lodged in my chest like a splinter. "Aaron," I said quietly, "I'm telling you something is very wrong." "And I'm telling you," he replied, voice tightening, "don't start a witch hunt without absolute clarity. It will make you look unstable." Unstable, emotional, overreacting. The call ended without answers, without help. By evening, I was still in the same chair, my eyes burning, my fingers numb. I skipped lunch, then dinner. My phone buzzed, my sister checking in. I ignored it. I stared at the stolen money, the fake vendors, the lies woven into our financial backbone, and felt a loneliness so sharp it bordered on physical pain. No one was coming to save me. If Jonathan had built a trap, then I would have to build one better. And I would have to do it alone. The breaking point came just after midnight, long after the rest of the building had gone dark. I was still at my desk, breathing in the dry, recycled office air tinged with the faint scent of someone's forgotten takeout. My eyes stung from rereading the same spreadsheet cells, hunting for any detail I might have missed, any thread that could unravel Jonathan's entire scheme. At some point, I leaned back, stared at the ceiling panels, and finally said it aloud into the empty office. "I can't do this by myself." The words hung there, soft but heavy, and immediately one name surfaced: Aisha. I hadn't spoken to her in almost a year. We'd come up together as postdocs, then diverged me into entrepreneurship, her into the world of FDA, regulatory compliance, and forensic auditing. She was blunt, brilliant, and allergic to bullshit. If anyone could help me without flinching, it was her. My pulse thudded as I opened an old text thread. The last message I'd sent was a half-joking meme about reviewer comments. I hovered, then typed 2 words. "Need help." 3 dots appeared almost instantly. "You alive?" I exhaled for the first time in hours. "Barely. Can you talk?" She called immediately. "What happened?" she demanded before I could even say hello. Her voice was the same, quick, sharp, caffeinated. "My CFO," I said, swallowing hard. "He's been siphoning trial funds, shell vendors, fake invoices. There's so much I don't even know how far it goes." Aisha let out a low whistle. "Damn, you always did know how to pick dramatic collaborators." "I'm serious." "I know. That's why I'm already putting my shoes on. You have coffee there." I looked at the half-empty pot someone had brewed that afternoon. "If you're desperate." "I'm on my way. Don't touch anything until I get there." 20 minutes later, she stepped into my office, bundled in a long coat, curls pulled up haphazardly like she'd left her apartment at a dead sprint. She dropped a to-go cup in front of me, actual good coffee, not the cardboard brew we kept around. "Start talking," she said, shrugging off her coat and rolling her chair beside mine. I opened the folder of exported logs. He created a vendor, Veritas Clinical Consulting, registered under his brother, moved more than 2 million through it. She leaned closer. "Show me timestamps." I scrolled. She scanned fast, her brow furrowing. "These overrides, amateur hour. He didn't even mask the administrator's signature, and these invoice numbers, they're sequential. Sloppy." My chest tightened. "Can we prove intent?" "Oh, sweetheart," she said, swiveling toward me with a grim smile. "We can prove everything." I felt something shift inside me. Not relief. Relief was too far away. But steadiness. The first hint of solid ground beneath my feet. "We'll need full system copies," she continued. "Metadata, server logs, access histories, and a timeline. Regulators love timelines." "And Jonathan?" I asked quietly. She shrugged. "We build the case first, then we drop it on him so hard he won't know which way is up." I stared at the glow of my monitor, reflecting off the window behind her. For the first time since this nightmare began, my hands weren't shaking. "We're going to nail him," Aisha said, her voice calm and certain. "But we do it right." I nodded. "Tomorrow." "No," she said, pulling out her laptop. "We start now." And somewhere deep inside the exhaustion and fear, something sharper flickered awake. Resolve. The next 2 weeks stretched and blurred, a quiet war fought behind polite smiles and steady voices. Every morning I walked into the office pretending nothing was wrong, offering Jonathan the same calm greetings I'd always given him. He responded with that infuriatingly warm smile, the one that made people think he was safe. He'd lean against my doorway some days, sipping his oat milk latte, asking about enrollment projections or upcoming investor calls while I nodded, pretending my pulse wasn't pounding hard enough to shake the air between us. Inside, I felt like a live wire. Aisha spent nights with me in the office. The 2 of us hunched over laptops while the HVAC system whispered overhead, and the emergency exit sign cast a soft red glow across the floor. She pulled data from backups, reconstructed overwritten logs, and pieced together metadata fragments Jonathan didn't even realize he'd left behind. Every discovery landed with the weight of another nail closing a coffin. One night, as the streetlights flickered against the window, she pointed at her screen. Look at this. An email thread, forwarded, archived, then deleted. A conversation between Jonathan and someone at a rival biotech company. My throat tightened as I read. I'm accelerating things, Jonathan had written. She's too distracted with trial optics to push back. The reply. Then the transition needs to happen before Q4. Transition. The word lodged in my ribcage like a shard of glass. He was planning a coup, I whispered. Aisha nodded, and using stolen funds to sweeten his exit package somewhere else. Classic play. I sank back in my chair, the vinyl cold against my spine. How long has he been doing this? Since before the Series A, she said. He built the shell company right after you closed the seed. He's been siphoning slow and steady, not enough to trigger the bank's automated alerts, just enough to bleed you out. The office felt too small suddenly, the air too tight. Why didn't I see it? Because he counted on you trusting him, she said simply, and because you were busy actually running the company. Jonathan wasn't just stealing money, he was setting a narrative. Aisha found another thread, this one between him and Aaron, the board member who had brushed me off. Jonathan had written, "She's spread too thin, emotional. We need to discuss a leadership transition if the trial stumbles." My vision went white for a second. A ringing sound filled my ears. He used my company, my science to undermine me, I said. Aisha's jaw tightened, and now we use his arrogance to bury him. We organized everything. The timeline, the metadata, the duplicate invoices, the LLC filings. Aisha built a mirrored environment, an exact, frozen snapshot of the system as it existed before Jonathan could scrub it. We drafted the regulatory notifications. SEC for financial fraud, OIG for misuse of clinical funds, FDA because trial money isn't just money, it's public trust. We prepared the shareholder alert, referencing Section 4(3)(b) of our corporate bylaws, unauthorized financial actions resulting in material risk to the company. The night before the confrontation, I sat alone in my office, staring at the city lights smearing gold against the dark sky. My stomach churned, but there was something steadier beneath the fear. I typed a message to Aisha. "Tomorrow morning." Her reply came instantly. "Recording ready." I closed my laptop slowly, the click sounding final in the silent room. Tomorrow, everything would break open. Morning arrived too brightly, the kind of pale sunlight that made everything look washed out. My office, my reflection in the glass, even the quiet corridor outside my door. I barely slept, but adrenaline had burned away whatever exhaustion I should have felt. The air smelled faintly of oversteeped coffee drifting from the break room, and the soft tap-tap-tap of someone typing down the hall made my nerves tighten like wire. I kept rehearsing the first line in my head, over and over, until it no longer felt like words but muscle memory. At 8:11, Jonathan walked in. Light blue dress shirt, sleeves rolled casually, the same cologne he always wore, cedar and something expensive. He looked relaxed, too relaxed, a man who still believed he was untouchable. "Morning," he said, pausing at my door. "You ready for the investor prep call later?" I smiled, thin, steady. "Actually, Jonathan, I need you in my office for a few minutes." He blinked, surprised. "Now?" "Yes, now." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I gestured to the chair across from me. My palms were damp, but my voice stayed calm. "I found some discrepancies in our financial logs," I said. "I'd like you to walk me through them." He sat slowly, posture tightening just enough for me to catch it. "What kind of discrepancies?" I clicked to the first file. The glow of the monitor cast long shadows across his face. "These disbursements," I said. "Veritas Clinical Consulting, nearly 3/4 worth." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Ah, yes, those were urgent coordination costs, standard routing." "Then explain why they were approved after midnight on days you weren't working." His jaw flexed. "Timestamps can be misleading." "Explain why the vendor's incorporation filing lists your brother as the registered agent." He inhaled sharply, barely, but I saw it. That's a coincidence, he said. A coincidence, I repeated, my voice flat. Jonathan, don't insult me. He leaned back, folding his arms. You're overreacting. This is what I meant when I said you get emotional under pressure. There it was, the blade he'd been using for months. I didn't flinch. I pulled up the email. Then explain this. I turned the screen so he could read the line. She's too distracted to notice the reallocations. Just keep the invoices clean. His throat bobbed. That message is out of context. Which context makes it better? I asked. The part where you hid $2.4 million, or the part where you plotted a leadership transition with Aaron? His face drained of color. He opened his mouth, then shut it, then opened it again. Okay, he said finally. I can explain. Then explain. He shifted forward, trying to regain footing. The company needed flexibility. I routed the funds to streamline approvals. Veritas was a temporary structure, nothing malicious. Temporary structures don't siphon millions, I said. He held up a hand, voice softening the way he used when he wanted control. Alexis, listen, we can fix this. You and I built this company together. There's no need to escalate things. Let's handle this internally. No, I said quietly. We're past that. His eyes narrowed. You don't have proof of intent. This is circumstantial at best. Actually, a voice said behind him, she has everything. Jonathan whipped around. Aisha stood in the doorway, phone raised, the small lead on her recorder glowing red. His face twisted. You're recording this. You can't do that. I announced my presence before you responded, she said calmly. Consent is already on record. He looked back at me, betrayal morphing into panic. You set me up. I met his stare, my heartbeat steady now. No, Jonathan, you set yourself up. I just documented it. He shook his head, voice rising. This will ruin the company. Investors will walk. The board will turn on you. The board, I said, sliding a printed packet across the desk, will be reviewing all of this in an emergency meeting today, along with the regulatory bodies. He stared at the documents, metadata timelines, invoice sequences, incorporation records, proof layered on proof. His voice cracked. Alexis, please don't do this. You did this, I whispered. I'm just ending it. His phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Access revocations, admin suspension, system locks. Aisha had triggered the sequence. Jonathan's breath hitched. He looked at his screen, then at me, horror blooming across his face. You can't. It's already done. He stood too quickly, knocking his chair back, eyes wide and darting like a cornered animal. You have no idea what you've started, he said. I rose slowly from my seat. You stole from the trials, from our patients, from the science we swore to protect, and you thought I wouldn't notice. He took a step back, then another. And I watched the exact moment realization broke him, when he understood there was no excuse left, no lie deep enough, no path out. Jonathan had finally fallen. He didn't speak again after that. He just stood there, chest rising and falling too fast, eyes flicking between me and the packet of evidence like he was searching for some hidden escape hatch. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. Within minutes, security arrived. They didn't touch him, just hovered politely near the doorway as I issued the directive to suspend all his access. HR sent the formal termination for cause. Jonathan stared at the screen of his phone as notification after notification hit, each one another door slamming shut. I'll appeal, he muttered, voice thin. You're welcome to try, I said quietly. The board will see everything. The board meeting was scheduled for noon. I barely felt my legs as I walked into the conference room, one of those sterile spaces with cold LED lights and the faint scent of dry erase markers. My throat tightened when I saw them sitting there. Aaron, 2 investor representatives, and our independent director. Jonathan was notably absent. His invitation rescinded the moment HR filed the termination documents. Aaron nodded at me, expression tight. Let's get started. I didn't waste time. I handed out the packets, Timeline, evidence logs, invoice reconstructions, the shell company registration, the email threads. As I spoke, the room stayed painfully quiet except for the soft shuffle of pages turning and the occasional scratch of someone's pen. 5 minutes in, one of the investor reps looked up. "This is extensive." Another leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "The metadata is irrefutable. These weren't errors." "No," I said, "they were." When I reached the part about the conversations between Jonathan and the rival Biotech, Aaron's jaw tightened so hard I could hear the faint click of his teeth. "I want to be absolutely clear," I said. "He used embezzled funds to position himself for an exit deal. He planned to undermine my leadership, sabotage our trial milestones, and walk into a cushioned role somewhere else. And he thought we wouldn't uncover it," the independent director murmured, shaking her head. There was a long silence before Aaron finally spoke. "We owe you an apology," he said, voice low. "I dismissed you. I shouldn't have." The words didn't feel satisfying. They felt overdue. The board voted unanimously. Termination for cause, immediate notification to regulators, initiation of legal proceedings, an external audit to verify the scope of the damage, a communications plan to protect the company during fallout. By the time I left the room, the decision was final. That afternoon, our legal team submitted reports to the SEC and the Office of Inspector General. The FDA was notified of potential misuse of trial funds. I expected panic, screaming, finger-pointing, catastrophizing. But instead, there was a strange calm in the office, a kind of sobriety. My team worked quietly, scanning documents, patching the financial system, checking enrollment communications. No one said Jonathan's name. News spreads fast in biotech. By evening, I heard from a friend at another startup that Jonathan's LinkedIn profile had gone private. Another text came in, a rumor that the rival company had cut ties with him the moment our notification landed in their inbox. They weren't willing to be dragged into a regulatory scandal. No one would be. Even HR, who never broke composure, looked shaken when they returned his badge. Deactivated, useless, a shiny rectangle that no longer meant anything. Justice, I realized, doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence, with doors closing, with consequences unfolding in small, precise steps. When the office finally emptied, I sat alone in the dim light, exhaustion settling deep in my bones. The truth was out. The board believed me. Regulators were already moving. But beneath, the relief was something heavier. It was over. And I was exhausted. For 8 months, my life unfolded inside conference rooms, legal offices, and the windowless space our auditors commandeered in the west wing of the building. I learned the smell of printer toner so well it felt like part of my bloodstream. I learned the hollow ache of waiting for regulators to finish asking their questions. Long, deliberate questions meant to make you relive every misstep, as if recounting it more slowly would change the ending. I learned that justice is not swift. It is measured. It is procedural. It is exhausting. The legal fees climbed past $340,000 by the time we reached the midway point. I signed so many documents my signature started losing its loops, flattening into something utilitarian. During the worst of it, I'd wake up well before dawn with my heart racing, convinced I'd missed some artifact in the logs, some overlooked variable Jonathan could twist to make himself look like the victim. Sometimes I'd sit on the edge of my bed, elbows on my knees, breathing against the tightness in my chest until the world steadied enough to move again. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the company began to heal. Our largest hospital partner reached out first. Their CIO called me directly, her voice balanced between caution and something like relief. "We heard about the transition," she said. "If your security posture has changed, we'll need updated documentation." "It has," I told her, "and I want to walk you through everything we've put in place." When I finished outlining the new safeguards, double signature disbursement controls, independent audit trails, rotating credential keys, she exhaled. "Good," she said. "We're staying with you." Jonathan always felt sleek, but not solid. That word, solid, hit me in a place I didn't know I still protected. Months later, when our Series B finally closed at $10.4 million, I stood at the back of the conference room rather than at the head of the table. My team had grown. The new controller we hired was methodical and unflappable, with a dry sense of humor that made the worst days feel manageable. Aisha joined the company formally as compliance chief. Her first act was to rewrite our internal audit protocols in a way that made even our investors nod with impressed respect. Trial funds aren't just money, she reminded the team during onboarding. They're promises, and promises leave trails. I still triple-check access logs, still pause before approving anything with more than 2 zeros. Trauma leaves fingerprints. Some nights I wake at the smallest sound, my phone buzzing, a Slack notification, the building elevator groaning, and my body floods with the old fear that something is slipping past me again. But the panic doesn't swallow me whole anymore. It just passes through, familiar but no longer in control. As for Jonathan, last I heard, he was doing contracted financial modeling for a mid-tier startup 3 states away. No board seat, no equity, reputation quietly eroded. People don't hire someone who risks bringing regulators to their doorstep. LinkedIn shows nothing now, no photo, no job title, just a blank rectangle where his career used to be. Sometimes, when I think back to the moment I confronted him, I feel a ghost of the shaking that once lived in my hands. But then I remember the look in his eyes when the truth closed in around him. The instant he realized the narrative he'd built was collapsing, that the woman he'd called emotional was the one holding the evidence that would undo him. And I breathe. Because I survived it. Because I rebuilt. Because I learned to trust myself long before the board learned to trust me. And because somewhere out there, someone else is sifting through numbers that don't add up, feeling that cold rush of recognition as betrayal sharpens into certainty. If this story reaches them, if it lands in the hands of someone who's been dismissed, minimized, called unstable while they were telling the truth, then that alone makes the long nights worth it. Knowing someone understood, even from a distance, that's what kept me standing. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I stayed in my office long after everyone left, lights dimmed, the air conditioning rattling through the vents with that uneven hum that usually soothed me during late work sessions. Not now. My mind was too loud, running loops around every conversation I'd ever had with him, every instinct I'd smothered because I wanted to believe partnership meant safety. By the time the sky outside the windows turned the faint gray of pre-dawn, I'd made my decision. I needed legal advice. Not vague, friendly guidance, the real kind. The kind that protects founders who are being slowly erased. I called our outside counsel, Morgan Tate, as soon as it was a reasonable hour. She answered on the second ring. "Lena, you okay? You sound off." "I need help," I said, my voice hoarse. "I found documents, acquisition drafts that I never approved. Darius has been negotiating something behind my back. There's a board vote I wasn't told about." There was a pause, longer than I expected. "Do you have proof?" she asked finally. "I have files, emails, version histories, spreadsheets projecting the company without me, a whole goddamn organizational chart." "That's evidence," she said carefully, "but not necessarily proof of wrongdoing. If you confront him without a full picture, he could claim you misinterpreted exploratory materials. He could say the board asked him to prepare scenarios." My frustration snapped like a live wire. He planned my removal. "I hear you," she said, "but intent is tricky. Before you act, you need concrete digital provenance, metadata, access logs, revision signatures. If you move too early, he'll scrub everything and the board may back him." Her measured tone, usually grounding, made me want to scream. "Morgan, he's planning to vote me out on Monday. I'm telling you this because I'm on your side. If you go to the board right now with incomplete evidence, you'll look emotional, reactionary, exactly the narrative someone might use against you." The word emotional hit like a slap. Again, always that damn word. "So what do?" I whispered. "You gather everything," she said. "Quietly, meticulously, and you tell no one until you can prove intent beyond corporate strategy planning." I hung up feeling like my ribs were collapsing inward. The office smelled faintly of stale carpet and warm electronics, and the fluorescent lights above me buzzed just enough to make my headache pulse harder. I decided to call Aaron, one of our board members, someone I thought might still have my back. He picked up sounding distracted. "Lena, everything all right?" "No, I found acquisition documents, without my knowledge, with timelines referring to a board vote next week." Another too long pause. "Okay," he said slowly. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Sometimes discussions happen informally before they involve the full board." "Are you kidding me?" My voice cracked. "They're planning leadership restructuring." "I understand you're under a lot of pressure," he said gently, which only made fury rise hotter. "Let's wait for clarity before escalating." "I have clarity," I snapped. "I have files." "Then forward them," he said. "We'll look." But there was something in his tone, a distance, a caution that chilled me. I suddenly knew he wasn't going to help. After the call, I sat alone in the quiet, staring at the floor until my vision blurred. My sister called around lunchtime. I let it ring. She texted, "Eat something. You always forget when you're stressed." I ignored that too. Hours passed. The sun shifted across the conference room glass. The HVAC kicked on again. I still hadn't moved. Because it had finally sunk in. No one was coming to save me. This wasn't going to be stopped by a polite call or a panicked email. If I wanted to keep my company, my work, my life, I would have to do this myself.